Welcome to today's presentation, 1 to 11, how to turn up macOS security. My name's Nick Thompson and I'll be your host today. Let's take a look at our agenda. So we're going to do just a brief overview of Jamf for those who aren't familiar with us. Then we're going to talk in depth about macOS security features. And then we're going to shift about how to manage those security features and talk about some common security frameworks that are out there in the industry and how you can apply them for your organization. We'll wrap up with some next steps and Q&A. So a brief overview of Jamf. First off, our mission here is to help organizations succeed with Apple. And we do that with our two products, Jamf Now and Jamf Pro. Jamf Now is really all about simple mobile device management, no IT required. Jamf Pro, on the other hand, is Apple management for IT professionals. You can sort of see them compared side by side here. Now is all about easy device setup, simple management, security without complexity, versus Pro lets you do the entire lifecycle management of Apple devices, from deploying them, configuring them, getting the appropriate apps on there, gathering inventory data, and applying security controls. Here's what both of the two products look like. They're simply web-based apps that you log into and conduct all of your management in a friendly user interface. Now, today's presentation is primarily going to focus on Jamf Pro. If you're interested in Now, if you're a smaller organization looking for smaller deployments, highly recommend you check out Jamf Now. You can just go to our website. You can even sign up for a free instance of Jamf Now where you can manage 3 devices for free under Now. But again, today we're going to focus a little bit more on Pro. A little bit about who we are and the organizations that we serve. We actually serve more than 13,000 organizations to help them manage over 9 million Apple devices. You see us in a lot of the traditional Apple companies, such as tech or marketing, but you also see us in the Fortune 500 and the most valuable brands. And something that we're very proud of here is how many schools that we serve as well, too. And Jamf has been doing this for a while. We've been doing it since 2002. And here's just a brief history of the most recent releases that we've had supporting all of Apple's new features. So this is all we do. We focus on Apple and we stay up to date with them every release that they have. Most recently here with macOS High Sierra and iOS 11. Again, today we're going to focus, though, on macOS, and we're going to focus primarily on security features. Now, to help frame this conversation, we talk to a lot of organizations about what they're experiencing in the marketplace and why they're deciding to bring Macs to work. And some of the top reasons that we are seeing here is that organizations want to attract talent. They tell us that there's a war out there for talent, for finding good talent in the marketplace. And they tell us that they really want 3 things. They say that attracting top talent is really important, retaining the talent that they have is very important, and making their users productive. And to highlight some of these facts, we found some interesting statistics. This is a report here from Manpower Group that highlights that the employers are reporting that the highest talent shortage that they're seeing here since 2007. And they're really having a hard time finding good skills. So finding IT staff, finding sales reps, finding engineers, finding technicians, finding management executives. A lot of these people are knowledge workers, people that would be on a computer almost all of the time. And so who are some of these talent people that are out there that we're trying to find? Well, a lot of them, according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, are millennials. There's 46 million millennials in the U.S. workforce right now. And what do these millennials want? Well, according to this recent survey here by PwC, they say that access to technology that they like to use makes them more effective at work. And not only does technology that they like to use make them more effective, it also makes them more productive. This is another survey that said employees with choice are more productive workers. They can focus more, they've got better collaboration, and they're better at learning. So what kind of choice are they trying to make? Well, we did a survey out there in the marketplace, and we asked a lot of employees, if given a choice, what sort of device would you choose? And 3 out of 4 employees said that they would choose Apple to use at work. And this makes sense because a lot of millennials sort of grew up on the Mac. Here's a great image from 2010 of a college freshman they're saying that 70% of them were using Mac. Just try to find the non-Apple devices in this picture. And of course, this is not just happening for small organizations, it's happening for large organizations as well too. You may have heard of the IBM story. This is Fletcher Previn, the CIO of IBM. And IBM, over the past few years here, have been implementing a user choice program. To date, they have now deployed over 100,000 Macs via a choice program started in June of 2015, which actually makes them the world's largest Mac deployment, which is just so funny to think about that IBM, the company that touted the PC, now has the world's largest Mac deployment. And some internal survey results from IBMers is really fascinating. They surveyed their internal IBMers and said, if given the choice, what device do you want for your next device? 73% of them said that they would choose a Mac over a PC. So this is happening. Macs are coming into your organization, and you need to do something about them. And so you may be these guys. Hopefully you get the reference to the title of our webinar here. And you might be saying, great, Macs are great, and sure, we want to offer them to our employees as a choice program, but what about security? How do I make sure that these devices are just as secure as the PCs that I am in charge of managing? Well, to talk about that, I want to frame up what sort of infrastructure that Apple has in place in terms of their operating systems. So here is the OSs that Apple ships that have some sort of management capabilities to them. macOS High Sierra, iOS 11, and tvOS as well too. tvOS is the OS that runs on the Apple TV. And the underpinnings on all of these OSs are built on a very rock-solid foundation of Unix. If you're not familiar with this, you should check out some of the open source stuff that Apple has published about their kernel, about their Unix kernel. It's actually based on a free BSD kernel. And so inherently, it already has a lot of great security controls right from its core center because of how secure and the open nature of Unix. Of course, Apple goes beyond that, and they add an additional layer of security on top of their operating systems. And so let's take a look at what they've added specifically on macOS. So first off, they have very tight control over all of the software updates that are pushed out to the Mac. Everything is signed by Apple and it's distributed through a very secure method so that you are always knowing that anytime you get a software update from Apple, it is actually from them and not a nefarious actor. They've also rolled out over the past few releases of macOS something known as System Integrity Protection, or SIP, or SIP, however you want to pronounce it. And this actually protects the core of the operating system. It prevents an end user from doing things like deleting the system folder or deleting folders that are core to the OS functionality. And this is something that is turned on now by default in every new Mac that ships. Theoretically, you can turn it off if you really want to, but it's highly recommended that you keep this on. Apple also has some really interesting features at the app level, such as Gatekeeper. Gatekeeper will allow you as IT to define, or rather the end user defines what sort of apps are available to be installed on the Mac. This could be only Macs from the App Store, only apps from identified developers, or from anyone out there in the world. It gives you granular control over that. Of course, Apple has the App Store for the Mac, and while not all software titles are delivered through there, a good number of them are. And anything that is submitted to the App Store is vetted and approved by Apple. At a system level, they offer encryption, full disk encryption known as File Vault. And this is really, really great. It's military grade strength. It meets all of the FIPS compliance standards out there. And it really doesn't have any impact to the end user whatsoever. And it is something that ships right inside the operating system. You don't need to go out and buy additional encryption software and add it on to the Mac. There's also something called XProtect, and this is sort of a hidden security feature on macOS. It's updated remotely by Apple, and what it does is it looks for known bad software and it would block it from running. And so this would allow Apple to remotely protect macOS from any sort of virally spreading malware. Apple's also implemented app sandboxing to prevent data leakage between apps. And of course, they have a lot of security or privacy controls built right in so that your end user's privacy will be protected. So here's our management layer cake so far. We've got Unix as the core foundation that the operating systems are built on top of. And then we've got all these additional security controls on top of that. So you may be asking yourself, great, okay, these security controls are really nice, but how is I, as the IT administrator, supposed to go around and ensure that Gatekeeper is turned on all of my Macs, or File Vault is turned on all of my Macs, and how do I report on all of this stuff? Well, luckily, Apple's also built a management layer on top of this as well, too. And this is known as the Mobile Device Management Framework. So that brings us to our next topic, is how do you manage these macOS security controls? So, as I mentioned, this is called Mobile Device Management, or MDM as it's abbreviated as. And it's simply the built-in management framework to all of Apple's operating systems. These are little profiles that you get to build, and you define various settings inside of the operating system. These profiles are delivered over the air via Apple's push notification service. And you build these profiles using a tool like Jamf, and they're just really tiny XML files. So what can you build in these profiles? Well, there's a lot of different things you can build. Here are some of the basics. So you can build passcode requirements. You can build restrictions. You can define what networks your devices are supposed to connect to. You can pre-bake VPN settings so your end users don't have to type in them manually. You can tell them what printers to use. You can define accounts for them. So you can define how your Exchange server works so your end users don't have to manually type in all of their Exchange server settings. You can define some security protocols as well, too. So you can deploy certificates if you happen to use certificates for authentication. Everything that you see under the security and privacy pane inside of system preferences can be configured here. So that means Gatekeeper and File Vault. If you're doing directory services, you can bind the Mac as well, too. And there's some advanced profiles that you can do as well. Now, what's great about these MDM profiles is not only do they work on the Mac, but they also work across the entire ecosystem of Apple devices. Apple TV, iPhone, iPad, and Mac. Now, not all profiles work on every device, and each device sometimes has specific ones, but the framework is consistent across all of them. So this is really cool, but MDM on the Mac is pretty good, but a lot of organizations tend to need a little bit more for Mac management, for this sort of true client management. And they want to do things like terminal commands and user account modification and non-App Store apps, and that's where Jamf comes into play with our agent. So we have a proprietary agent that can be installed on the Mac, and this is just a binary that gets automatically installed after you enroll it. And it lets you as IT build a hidden admin account. You get to define the username and the password for that hidden admin account. And why would you want that? Well, it enables you to have remote root access to the Mac. And remote root access is pretty powerful. That lets you do things like execute policies, run scripts, install software, and so much more. Here's a list of everything that the agent, or just a few things that the agent is capable of doing. So install custom package software, enforce File Vault settings, and actually escrow those keys. bind your Macs to a directory, run custom scripts. Anything that can be put into terminal can become a script. Set your firmware password, modify user accounts. So maybe you want to remove admin rights from everyone or add local user accounts. You can do that. And control the software update schedule as well, too. Of course, one of the big things is custom software installs. Like I said earlier, there's a lot of software that's not in the App Store, such as Microsoft Office and Adobe Photoshop. Things like that, you can use our tool to take a snapshot of that software, package it up into a package file, and push it out to all of your Macs. So Jamf really offers twofold: the MDM framework that's built into the operating systems and the Jamf agent for total Mac configuration. So again, we go back to our management layer cake here, and we've got this great foundation of Unix. We've got the operating systems built on top of that. We've got all those great security controls Apple's built into it, and now we have a management framework to remotely modify those commands. But there's something else too. There's something new at the top here, and these are the deployment programs. Because when you deploy a Mac, you want them to be consistently deployed. And that's where these come into play. So the first one here is Apple's Device Enrollment Program, or DEP as you might have heard it called. And that's zero-touch deployment. That means you can just hand a Mac to an end user and it gets automatically configured. You simply order your devices from Apple or from your reseller, and you have to just make sure that your reseller supports Device Enrollment Program and they get linked to your account. That means then it is automatically enrolled during setup. Now this works for Mac, it also works for iOS and tvOS. In fact, if you're using iOS and tvOS, it enables something called supervision. For VPP, this is the volume purchase program. This is the other half of the deployment programs. This lets you license Mac and iOS apps from the App Store in bulk. You can then distribute those licenses to your individual users, or better yet, just distribute them directly to the device. Because when you distribute it to the device, that means your end users don't have to use an Apple ID. And these are free programs that you can sign up for with Apple, and you can implement them and have them linked into Jamf. So what does this look like from the end user's perspective? Well, here's a Mac, and this is actually how we give out Macs to our new employees at Jamf. 3 simple steps. Open up the box, power it on, and there is no step 3. So here we go. We've got our Mac booting up for the first time. I simply select my region, I select my language, I connect it to a Wi-Fi network, and then I get this screen. This says that this Mac is going to be managed by my organization. And I could click on this little learn more if I want to as an end user, and it kind of describes what remote management means. I cannot skip this page. I have to accept the remote management. I can even take this a step further, and I can require that my end users log in with their LDAP credentials at this point so that I'm protected as an organization from who is actually getting a managed Mac. I then, as the end user, create my local computer account. Now, you as IT get to define what kind of account is created at this point. You can let everyone be full administrators if you really want to, or you can prevent them from being admins and just have them be standard accounts. My Mac is now set up, and I'm brought to my home screen, and I get a nifty little notification here in the upper right. And if I zoom in on what's happening here, it says, installing software and security settings, check out SelfService for more resources, hard IT. What really happened in the background? Well, we wirelessly provisioned this device using DEP, Device Enrollment Program. We installed some software in the background using Volume Purchase Program, VPP, and we applied all of our security settings using MDM, Mobile Device Management. I also just want to highlight one more thing here because it's pretty cool, and that is SelfService. SelfService is automatically installed in the background here. And SelfService is an app that you get to control. You get to populate with your approved resources. You'll notice in my demo one here, I've got printers, I've got apps, I've got email settings, and I've branded it as well too so that it's Acme and not Jamf. So you get to control all of the branding on this as well too. So now that we know that we can control our security settings, what sort of security standards do we want to deploy? There's a lot of security standards out there in the world. When approaching security, of course, your step 1 is just define what sort of standards you want. Seems pretty obvious, but again, there's a lot that are out there. There's, SOC 2, there's PCI, there's FIPS, there's HIPAA, there's HITRUST, there's GDPR, there's the CIS benchmarks, there's Cyber Essentials, there's alphabet soup of all of this. So you need to define what sort of security standards do you want on your Macs. A great place to start, of course, is what do you do for your PCs, and then try to find an analogy for them on the Mac side of things. And once you've picked your standard, the best part is that Jamf is a flexible framework. You get to apply whatever sort of security protocols that you would like to all of your Macs. Now, one that I'd really like to highlight and highly recommend that you look into is the Center for Internet Security, or the CIS Benchmark. And if you're not familiar with this, it's really, really great. Here's a great quote from their website. The CIS benchmarks help you safeguard your systems, software, and networks against today's evolving cyber threats. Developed by an international community of cybersecurity experts, the CIS benchmarks are configuration guidelines for over 100 technologies and platforms. So it's pretty great. It's open, and it's a great place to start. And you can check out their website as well. So how do you go about applying all of this stuff? Well, you use the Jamf framework. You use profiles, and you use policies, MDM and our Jamf agent. So let's look at some examples. The CIS benchmark says it is a good thing to have passwords on all of your Macs. Seems pretty obvious, but it's in there. And so how would you do that? Well, you would build a profile here that defines the passcode policy. And you'll notice all of the different things that I can populate for a passcode. So I can say, allow it to be a simple value one, define the passcode length, how many complex characters does it need to have, how soon does it require auto lock, so how soon does my Mac lock. And you can define that all based on either what the benchmark says or what you would like to do as your organization. The CIS benchmark also talks about restricting some of the system preferences that are out there. You don't want your users modifying the date and time preferences. You don't want them adding additional user accounts to there. So in this case, I've done a restriction payload, and I've said restrict these specific system preferences, the user and groups, the App Store, and date and time. I'm also going to restrict some consumer features because maybe I don't trust iCloud, or I don't want users to use the camera on the built-in Macs, and so I can choose to disable those as I see fit. So I could disable iCloud Drive, or I could disable Touch ID if I don't trust that. I could disable Apple Music if I wanted to, or the camera that's built onto the Mac. All depends on whatever your organization determines to be your security standards. I can enforce those gatekeeper settings that I was talking about earlier. So here's where I can choose to have all of my Macs either be just allow apps from the App Store, or allow them from identified developers as well, or from anywhere. And then I can prevent my users from overriding those gatekeeper settings, so they'd never be able to install software outside of my approved methods that I've defined. And I can enforce file vault encryption too. So I can make sure that all of my Macs are encrypted, and I get all of those encryption keys all in one spot. Another cool new feature here is the ability to approve kernel extensions. So if I'm using kernel extensions for like an antivirus tool, or virtual machines, or Dropbox uses a kernel extension, I can approve those using this approved kernel extensions payload. I can also use Jamf to restrict apps, so I could find and kill specific processes, and I can delete blacklisted apps that I don't want my users using. And if a Mac ever goes missing, I've got some remote commands at my disposal as well too. I can lock it, I can remove the MDM profile if I'm retiring it, or my CEO left his or her Mac in the cab again, and so I'm going to wipe it as well too. All of these controls are at your disposal. So settings is one part of security. The other part of security is keeping things up to date. And that's why we also have a patch management engine built into Jamf. And this patch management engine lets you do a lot of great things. It's patching for third-party software. And it's software titles that we actually monitor. And it lets you do automatic scoping of all eligible devices. So this means automatically find all of my Macs that have an old version of Word and then deploy that patch. And it helps you automate the monitoring and deployment of that. So this is kind of what it looks like. We've got our own patch source here, and we monitor 50 popular software titles. They're curated by us, and anytime it's updated, we actually have employees that will update that version number, and you'll get a notification saying that something's been updated. Now, you can go beyond just the patch source that we offer and add your own patch server if you'd like to. Or community members are building their own patch source out there as well too. Check out some of the things out on GitHub. And if you're setting up your own, there's a little bit of assembly required, but you can add your own custom software titles, or you could subscribe to one of those community ones. And it's really simple to do this kind of stuff. You just build a patch policy. It automatically finds all of your the devices that need to be scoped here, and then you define what the user interaction looks like. So it can be, you can tell it to have a notification for your users. You can also define grace period and deadlines for when they need to install these. And all of this can be installed right from the end user's self-service. So a new patch comes out, and the user just simply gets a little notification here saying that something's been updated, and they can see that, oh, there's an update for Google Chrome. Let me go ahead and install that update. And then on the back end of things, I get a patch report that tells me all of my Macs are up to date or all of my Macs are not up to date, all depending on how you define it there. Speaking of reporting, we have some really great reporting and remediation options built into Jamf Pro as well too. We collect a lot of inventory data, hardware data, software data, app usage data. And with that data, you can build groups to take actions on things. So I can build what's known as a static group where I just define it as, here are my Macs. Maybe this is the 4th floor or my marketing department or the Minneapolis office, whatever you want it to be. And I can apply specific profiles and policies to that group. The opposite of that are smart groups, where I first set up a string of criteria that say, find all my Macs that meet this criteria. And it's dynamically searching and updating automatically in the background, and it spits out my group membership here. And then I can automate things. I can automate having policies or profiles applied to those specific smart groups. So what does that look like? Well, we set up a password policy earlier here. Now I'm going to set up a smart group that says, find all devices without a password, and then automatically apply that password policy. Or find all of my devices that don't have File Vault turned on, and then automatically apply that File Vault policy. Or find all my devices without secure Wi-Fi and automatically apply the Wi-Fi profile. Hopefully you get how that works there. Now, we talked about today's presentation here being turning it up to 11, so I want to circle back to that CIS benchmark and highlight something really cool that our professional services team did. And it will really make your deployment be even louder than 10. Gotta love those bad jokes. If you check out our GitHub page, github.com/Jamf Professional Services, they've built something really great for the community here that's free for all Jamf customers. And this lets you implement the CIS checklist really, really easily. There's a little bit of assembly required on your end, but really it's just 3 policies with some scripts and a couple of extension attributes, and it provides a remediation solution with the CIS checklist. So this is really what it looks like here. I would set up 3 scripts. That first one is really setting my organization priority, so it's defining my security baselines by going through the CIS check mark and checking the ones I want. And then another script to check for compliance, and then a third script to do remediation action on it. So pretty cool and really great if you are implementing that benchmark. All right, so to recap here, we talked about Jamf Pro and how we can do the total lifecycle management of Apple devices, really keying in on those security controls there. If you're interested in how the server aspect of this works, you can either have it be a cloud-hosted server or you could run it on-premise, your choice. And we go beyond our product as well, too, by offering great professional services, training, and expert support. Speaking of support, too, we were recently named a Gartner's Peer Insight Customer Choice in the category of Enterprise Mobility Management. So we thank our customers for giving us some really great reviews there. And we've got a really wonderful community that is 50,000 members strong, and that's part of Jamf Nation. We touched on this a bit here, but to recap, we integrate with all of these Apple programs and services: device enrollment program, volume purchase program. If you're a school, those two are combined into something called Apple School Manager, and the Apple Push Notification Service. We integrate with all these great third-party integrations: Active Directory, Single Sign-On, Microsoft System Center, Cisco ICE, ServiceNow. We've got a very robust API as well, too. How to get started? Contact us. Go to jamf.com and just reach out. We'd love to chat with you about what this information, about what your environment would look like and how to customize it. Click on that little Chat with Us button in the lower right-hand corner, and we'd be happy to get you going. And check out some of our other webinars as well, too. And lastly, do check out Jamf Nation. It's free and open, and there's amazing community support there where you can really learn a lot. So with that, I want to thank everyone, and if you do have any further questions, reach out to us. We'd be happy to chat. Thanks, everyone. Have a wonderful day.